Hello my loves, this is the November tutorial and you guys voted for a tutorial about line art. So let's just jump right in. For the longest time I did not really focus on my line work, and it was a game changer when I realized how much it can actually change a drawing and make it look 10 times better if the lines are good. Now I will say that in this tutorial I will not say that one kind of line art is better than others, because for every art style there is a different kind of look of the lines that go well with the style. So I will show you different versions of line art and give you tips and tricks, but in the end you have to see what fits best to your own art style. But of course there's some general tips and tricks that always apply, and we will go through them together in a second. Let me show you some drawings from fellow artists and check out how they do their lines first. The first artist is Sibylline. You probably know her work. She is an amazing gouache and watercolor artist, and you can see that she's using very clean lines without a texture, but she's also changing the colors of the lines a bit here and there. We will also talk about line colors in this video. The next artist is Pam. I have no idea how to pronounce her username, but I will link all the artists that I show you in the description down below. But let's look at her line work. So she uses very thin lines with a pencil that has a lot of texture. And you can definitely see the difference between Sibylline's lines and Pam's lines. These ones are way thinner. The next artist we're going to talk about is Lineart. She is amazing. She is not using any actual outlines, so she's definitely using the detail lines that you can see, for example, in the crotch area or in the details on her face, but she's not using any outlines, which makes the whole drawing look way more soft. There's so many different outline styles that I definitely cannot cover in this video, but one style that I want to show you and talk about is also the painterly outline style, I would say. So Loish is doing that all the time. She is actually starting off with lines and also sketchy outlines, but when she is coloring in, I think she is coloring on top of the sketch, or like she's definitely covering some of the lines. So you will see some areas have outlines, like here in the neck, but then also some areas don't have any lines. For example, the hair of this guy and also the back of the neck. In general, she's also using lines in her rendering to balance off blending and also sharp details, but this is definitely giving off more of a painterly vibe, I would say. For the longest time, I preferred my work without outlines because I think it just brings everything together and it works really well with the warm colors that I'm using. But lately, I have to say that I prefer my work with outlines because, first of all, because the process is more fun for me, and also I just like how it looks like. It looks more simple, and that's what I like at the moment. One of the most important things in line work is to have some thick lines and some thin lines. So let's talk about line thickness now. There's really no right or wrong way, and I think everybody's doing it differently, but I like to balance off thin and thick lines in my work. Basically, the areas that are an actual outline and they divide different objects, like the outlines of the jacket, the face, and so on, I paint them with a thick outline, whereas details and every area that is hit by light have a thin outline and sometimes even a gap. Like here on the details of her jacket, for example, I'm just gonna mark the areas for you so it's easier to see, but basically I like to leave a gap in the line to indicate delicate lines and light. You can do the same thing for shadows too, by the way. Just give the outline more thickness in areas that are in shadow. Here you can see what a difference the line thickness actually makes. I overpainted the face with a monoline brush that has only one thickness no matter how much pressure you apply, and I feel like it looks way more simple but in a bad way, and boring, kind of. Here is the comparison. Now you can see it much better. This is something I never really paid much attention to in the beginning of my art career, but it makes a huge difference, really. I want to show you now a little trick that I like to use, and it is to thicken the areas where two lines meet. I am showing some Inktober pieces because I think Inktober is a great opportunity to practice good line work, because you cannot hide behind colors and cool effects. So it's very easy. Just widen the lines on the areas where two or more lines meet. And this will make your drawing look more interesting, and it also gives more depth and contrast. I thought it would be a cool idea to draw a simple face in this video to show you how I handle all my lines, from rough sketch to the actual outline. But I'm just gonna do a rough little painting, so if I would be working on an actual finished illustration, the outline at the end would be more clean. But you know, I'm pretty sure you will see what I'm doing anyways. So for the first rough sketch, I like to use the Max Gouache Clean brush that comes with a Max Pack Gouache brush set. I will link it in the description. But basically you can use any kind of sketchy brush that doesn't allow for details. I make the brush size pretty big so I can focus on the shapes first, and then later on I will go into detail. I'm going to speed up this portion of the video because I don't want this video to be too long. Once I'm done with the rough sketch, I paint over it with a thinner and more detailed brush, and I will show different brushes at the end of this video, but in this case I'm using my own outline and sketch brush, and I'm using the pencil grainy one. I also darken the gray a bit because I want to go more into detail. This is not going to be my final outline. I draw most of my outlines in 3 steps, which are rough, then details, and then outline. But I know other artists paint the outline directly on the rough sketch, so yeah, just do what feels more comfortable for you. Now I moved my small sketch to a new canvas because the The canvas I used for this tutorial was too small and made the brush too pixelated. Anyways, I'm still using the same brush but in a darker gray now. I usually make my outlines dark gray while painting because I feel more comfortable like that. I am making them black once I start coloring them, and then at the end I'm changing the colors again, but we will talk about the colors in a second. Now I am painting in the actual outlines. You can see how I am applying different levels of pressure to get a variation of line thickness. This does not work with all brushes, so make sure you are picking a brush that you can work with. For example, I could not make the outline with a brush that doesn't react to my pressure. That would be really weird for me because I'm so used to this. Try to be confident in your lines, and whether use one confident line instead of a lot of small lines that looks just very messy in the end. And you can also see how I am constantly redoing a lot of lines. So I'm constantly making a line and then removing it again and again and again until I like it. Here I am going back in and I'll make some areas thicker to create more depth. Okay, we talked about line thickness. Now let's move on to line colors. Line colors can really make a big difference in your drawings. I'm going to show you the illustration I did of Emily in Paris, and you can see that the only thing I changed is the outline color. So the left side has colored outlines and the right side has outlines in black. And it just makes a huge difference. On the left side it looks softer, and on the right side it has way more contrast. When I think about line colors, it already starts in the sketching phase for me. As I already said, I personally prefer to sketch in light gray and get darker as I add more and more details. This makes it easier to not focus too much on details in the first few steps. And also, as I mentioned earlier, this outline is pure black now, but when I work on the outline, I actually do that in dark gray, and then I make the lines black after that. That's also just a personal preference, you don't have to do that. Now I'm going back to the sketch I made earlier, and I'm quickly coloring everything in with the base colors to show you two ways to color the outlines after that. I will speed up the coloring process again. Oh, and lately I've been using the brush called Syrup to color in my base colors. It's basically a triangle shaped brush without texture, and I love it very much. It has a very good pressure sensitivity, so it's just really easy to be precise with your colors. And in case you didn't see it, I'm coloring in below the outline layer, which is set to normal. Okay, so the first way to color your outlines is to set your outline layer to alpha lock. This means you can only color in where you already put down colors on this layer, in this case only the outlines. And then I always pick a brush that has no texture, such as the hard airbrush, and then I basically just use darker colors than what's underneath the outline layer. So for the skin, I'm using this dark red brownish color, and I leave the hair with the black outlines, but if she were blonde, I would definitely change the outline color. And since I painted the eyes and the lips and everything on the outline layer as well, I can go in and change the colors too. Sometimes I leave everything black except of the skin and the lips, and then other times I change all the outline colors, so it always depends on my mood. The method I just showed you is what I always do, but I want to show you one more option and also why it can be problematic. So we are back at the beginning with all black outlines, and now you set your outline layer to multiply. And you alpha lock it again. And now what you do is you just color pick what's on the canvas, and then you use this to color in your outlines. I would say the colors are almost always right, except for the skin. You sometimes need to adjust it and make it a little bit darker. In general, this method is good for when you feel unsure about picking the right colors from the beginning. And yeah, because you have the outline layer and multiply, and this kind of helps you to pick a right color. Here you can see I just color picked the skin color and I find it too light. So I need to go back in and use a darker color here. The problem with this method is that when you have two colors underneath the outlines, it looks really messy, like here on her cheek. It looks very messy, so this is why I don't do this anymore. Another small trick I want to talk about before I show you some brushes is hatching. Hatching is a big topic and I don't do a lot of it, so I can really only show you what I do. But basically, I do this sometimes in areas where I want thick outlines, but it looks too sharp, so I'm fading them out using hatching lines. So for this drawing, I used a couple of hatching lines on her jacket where I wanted to fade out some of the shadows, and also on her neck. But again, I think it's easiest to understand if I just quickly show you how I would do it on this drawing. Okay, let's talk about some brushes. This is the part which 100% depends on your own taste and preference, and obviously there are tons and tons of great outline brushes out there, but I wanted to show you some common ones that are already in Procreate and available for you. The first one is the dry ink brush. You can find it in the inking section. I see a lot of artists use it for their lines. It's really pretty, it has a nice texture, and you can get your lines really sharp. It also has a nice pressure sensitivity, so it makes a great outline brush. Next one is a brush called Derwent. You can find it in the sketching section. This brush is very thin and it has a pencil-like texture, and it also has those jitters on the outside. I personally don't use it, but I've seen a couple of artists use it, and yeah, and I thought I would just talk about it in this video. Next up is the Studio Pen. You can find it in the inking section. If you are looking for those no texture clean lines but also want pressure sensitivity, maybe it's worth trying out. And then we have an all-time favorite of a lot of artists that I'm seeing online, and it's a 6B pencil. You can find it in the sketching section. It has a nice texture, but I personally don't like this square shape of it, and I find it very hard to draw with, but it's still definitely worth trying out because that's just my own opinion. Next up is Monoline. I've never seen anyone talk about this brush, but just in case you're looking for a round, no texture, clean brush that has no pressure sensitivity, so you will always have the same line thickness, and it's also not fading out. So yeah, you can find it in the calligraphy section. And then how can I end this video without showing you my new favorite brushes? I thought I would talk about them because you all have access to them anyways. So this is my own brush set. I've talked about it quite a lot. Basically, it's just 3 pencil-like brushes. They all have a slightly different texture. There's not much difference to them. Basically, the 2B pencil sketch has the least amount of texture, and then the grainy one has a little bit more, and the grainy 2 has the most texture. And that's basically the only difference. But I really like to use the grainy 1 and the grainy 2 for my outlines. I just like how it looks like, and yeah. And right when I wanted to finish this video, one more brush popped up in my head, and it's the Lineart pencil. You can find it in the sketching section. It is like the monoline brush, no pressure sensitivity, no fading out, but it has a little bit of a texture. And that's it, and it's everything I know about line art. As always, practice makes perfect, but if you keep these things in mind, maybe line art will be a bit easier for you. I really hope this was helpful for you, and thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. You have no idea how grateful I am for each and every single one of you. Thank you so much, and have a lovely day. Bye!